So I just saw the movie The Housemaid, and this movie is honestly amazing. I really enjoyed it, and I'm kind of pickier about movies, especially newer movies. So I don't always like everything that comes out, but I really enjoyed this. If you have not seen the movie yet, I really encourage you to stop this video and go watch it and then come back, only because it's a psychological thriller. And obviously, once I tell you what the movie is about, you're not going to be able to go into it the same way. You only can have that experience of ignorance once. So if you haven't seen it, last chance, because I'm going to be talking about the whole plot in this video today, but I really do encourage you to pause this, don't finish watching this, go see the movie, and then come back so we can discuss it together. If you have seen the movie, or if you literally just don't give a shit, let's get started. So this movie I think one reason why I really enjoyed it is because it feels so it's a realistic solution for how to get out of these types of situations. This is something someone could actually do. And I know that because I have actually done what she did in this movie. And once I saw the movie, I was like, oh my God, Erin, why have you not made a video about this? And I have no answer for you. I actually have no answer for you. I don't know why I haven't made a video about this before, because not only have I done this one time in my life, I've done this multiple times in my life. Granted, just to clarify, there are two parts of her plan, the wife's plan that she did. One was finding a replacement object for herself so that she was no longer the object that he obsessed over and projected his self-hatred and his need for stimulation onto. And the second part was putting on a performance that caused him to want to discard her. I have not done the first thing, okay? Just to clarify, I have not went out and found women and seduced them into my abusive situations so that they could replace me. Have not done that. Don't recommend. But the second part of it, I have done. And I don't know how many other people out there have done this. I really have not met a lot of people who have done this, but I have, and I just don't know why I haven't made a video about this before. So I'm making a video today. And the whole point of this video is to teach you how you can get out of controlling and emotionally abusive relationships if you are worried about leaving and the post-separation abuse that might happen. And that's, I guess, the clinical term for it. But post-separation abuse can be just as intense as the actual abuse that occurs within the relationship, if not scarier. I mean, that's where blackmail can come in. The smear campaigns can get even worse. The type of control that someone is trying to assert over you in order to get you back, or just to ruin you because they hate you now and they think of you as even less of a person that they care about in order to be able to make themselves stop. Post-separation abuse, whether a friendship has ended or whatever this is, it's very intense. However, just to also preface this video today, if you have children with someone, if you're married to someone, if there is more on the line when you leave than just their emotional, the emotional reward they receive from being with you or their image, if more is on the line than just those two things, like kids, assets, maybe they're using you for their basic needs to be met, like they're using you for a house, they're using you for money. If more is on the line, like those things, it's not that this video won't apply to you at all, but your solution is going to be much more complex. I will be speaking today from my experience as a single, unmarried woman who does not have children. That's the experience I'll be speaking from. And what I have been used for in relationships is the emotional experiences that I have provided within conflict, or however I have emotionally fed them or stimulated them, as well as how I have benefited someone's image. Those are the two things I've been used for. So those were the two things that I needed to navigate while trying to leave, understanding that that's what I'd be taking away from them. You have to understand what the person will be losing in order to figure out what your plan is for leaving. But once I saw this movie, I was just like, I'm sure a lot of people didn't internalize this movie as a very real solution for themselves. Granted, some of the things in the movie you should not internalize as a real solution for yourself. Like I said, don't go out and seduce women to replace you so that you can leave. Don't do that. But I could see how people wouldn't internalize it as a solution because, one, it's a psychological thriller. It's a movie, you know, everything's very like heightened and dramatic. I mean, she has the dude pull his tooth out to prove that he's going to be like a good boy or whatever. Like, a lot of us aren't going to be doing that. I hope that you're not ever going to have to do something like that. So I could see how people wouldn't internalize it for that reason. And then also because the performance that you're going to have to figure out for yourself, it's not going to be the same for every single person. And I'm going to mention several examples of tools, of performance tools that you can use, or types of performative roles that you can take on. But you might not take on all of them because we each have established our own dynamics within our relationships. We all fight in different ways. The person that we're with enjoys conflict in different ways. They receive that kind of emotional supply from us in different ways. They picked us for different reasons because they have their own personality type, and the type of partner that they're looking for is not the same. So we're not always all going to be taking on the same performative role. I did want to preface this also by saying, I think when you really stop to think about it, this type of solution actually makes sense. When you're thinking about how to leave a person with a personality disorder, these are not straightforward, typical relationships anyway. In the entire dynamic of how we got into the relationship, how we were tricked into the relationship, the ways that we've had to survive within the relationship by picking up like strange, weird, wacky, honestly kind of like emotionally manipulative habits as well in order to survive in this kind of environment, to have the cognitive dissonance that we need to have to hold two truths at once and keep ourselves going so we don't go insane. Like, nothing about the relationship is healthy or how most healthy, agreeable relationships go. So it makes sense when you stop to think about it that the way you would leave would not necessarily be straightforward or typical either. And I think that's where the hang-up has kind of occurred. Everyone still obviously has the right to end things however they want to end things. This video today is about my own experiences. I just have found, for me, the post-separation abuse was so intense and so horrible that this was truly the safer, better way. I don't think enough people understand how much it occurs when you're trying to leave someone who has problems like this, where they need to feel like they're never being discarded and their ego is so easily threatened and they feel the right to control everything around them and they feel entitled to own everything around them. Trying to leave someone like that is terrifying. And even if domestic violence isn't necessarily going on and you're not worried that they're going to harm your physical body, what is the difference between that and them burning down everything else in your life and destroying your sense of peace that you're able to feel on a daily basis? They can rob you of your actual ability to enjoy your life, or they can rob you of your actual life through your social sphere, through your job. There's so many things that they can sabotage and take away from you. And I think if more people realized that there was a way to end these relationships that would not only help you stay safer, but would almost guarantee that they would not engage in any of these harmful behaviors towards you, I think almost everyone would want that option, would want to be educated in that option. And I just don't think it's occurred to enough people that there is an option like that out there. It didn't even occur to me for a while. I mean, I almost kind of accidentally stumbled onto it. But once I did, I was like, hell yeah, that's the one I'm going to be using forever. You know what I'm saying? Because why would I want to go through the other thing? Some people, it's like, okay, it's not going to be that bad. I'd rather just like cut it off, be straightforward, be honest, and then just deal with the repercussions. If that's true, go for it. But if it is genuinely daunting and terrifying, the idea of leaving and what they might do if you leave in a straightforward, honest way, then this video might be for you. And this is a an actual alternative that you can use that does work. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying that there's not going to be any weird reactions that happen, or there aren't going to be any tiny moments of like conflict and tension, but to deal with a less extreme version of conflict and tension, to know that you are actually literally reducing the triggered states that they might be entering into, or the ways that you're making their ego feel threatened, I think that's substantial. So I'm not guaranteeing you like a perfect breakup with no problems, but I'm telling you that there is an alternative way to go about breakups with people like this. I'm just telling you that there is a more effective way to go about this that literally avoids the booby traps and the laser points that we're trying to avoid, so that we can exit as safely as possible. That's the first reason why, if I ever were to find myself in a relationship like this again, it would still be the way that I chose to leave every single time. The other reason why I find that I prefer this way of leaving now, because once I figured it out, that was how I left every time after that with a different person. It's not like I was like, oh, that was kind of interesting, but next time I'm still going to be honest and be straightforward and tell them that I don't like them and tell them things that trigger them and cause them to go into these hyper abusive, self states. The other reason why I would pick these time and time again is because of all of the tools that I gained for myself, tools that I don't just use in relationships now, that I use in the world at large. I actually gained a lot from developing this approach for myself. It weirdly helped heal me. And I think that's because part of what I had to develop, the first tool that I had to develop, really confronted all of the self-doubt that I had. That is the one thing that wasn't touched on in the movie that I had to develop for myself. She, in the movie, already knew how she felt about her partner. He had already done such horrifying things to her that she had no doubt who he was, how she felt about him, and what she was going to do. We also need to reach that level of confidence for ourselves, because one of the reasons why that within these types of relationships, it typically takes 5 to 7 tries before we successfully leave, is because of the self-doubt that we have, that her character did not have. The first tool that I'm going to touch on that I built for myself really helped with that self-doubt. It helped heal that self-doubt. Because when you have that level of confidence for yourself, which her character had, you will be able to fully commit to the performance that you need to commit to without any doubt. You will know what your plan is because you know who they are, you know who you are, and you're able to navigate through that situation without any doubt about your sense of perception and reality. Learning how to not doubt your sense of perception and reality is a skill that you can use in life, that we need to learn how to use in life in general. Because baby, here is the reward that you get. Not only are you able to fully commit to the performance that you need to put on, but when I tell you that I have literally done a discard dance when I have been discarded by someone, I am not exaggerating. The very first time that I was able to successfully get someone to discard me, and I knew that they weren't going to be chasing me, harassing me, blackmailing me, that I was free. And they depict that scene in the movie where she literally is laughing in her car. She goes to hotel room. She's dancing on the fucking bed and she's drinking some champagne. That is what that moment feels like. It is completely different from how it feels when we typically leave in a straightforward, honest way. When we leave in a straightforward, honest way, we have now triggered something horrifying inside of this person that we have to worry about on a daily basis. We have to worry about if they're blackmailing us, what they're doing, which people they're manipulating, how they're fucking with our reality to try to get us back. And we have no idea when that triggered state is going to end, because we have threatened their ego, their image, their sense of self, their entire reality. We have threatened something substantial in a person who struggles to feel empathy and who thinks of us as an object. That's really scary. If I had to choose between triggering something like that in someone and finding a way to leave to where I know that they don't even want to think about me anymore because they don't care about me anymore and I am truly free, which one do you think I'm going to pick? And so when I have been able to successfully trick someone into discarding me on their own, and I can't even describe what that feels like, because I do. I know that I am truly free. And it's just funny because my worst fear used to be being discarded. My worst fear used to be not being picked. My worst fear used to be being thought of as boring. These were my worst fears. And I think that's the other cool thing about like taking this approach is like there's so many skills that you're gaining in the process through learning how to re-regulate yourself, learning how to assess your environment more accurately, and literally facing some of your dragons that you've been afraid to face in terms of how you have like maybe worshipped these people and never wanted them to consider you something unworthy of their attention. And now that's literally what you're trying to do. I just think it's a very freeing experience overall. And the reason why you are truly free is because it was their choice. That is the difference. You have to understand when you are normally going through these breakups in a straightforward and honest way with a dangerous person like this, or a person who's just emotionally immature and doesn't actually care about you because they've never actually cared about you, what is happening, the reason why they hoover so quickly and why everything is so intense for such a long period of time is because you've left, you've triggered this state, and now they're doing all of these things to get you back, to hurt you. That's a completely different dynamic going on versus when it's their choice to discard you. They have discarded you. They think of you as disgusting or boring, or they just don't even think of you as the same object anymore. So it's not that they won't ever hoover. It's not that they won't ever come back and try to get you back, but the entire dynamic is completely different. And that's what I want you to understand. When it's their choice to discard you, when it's their choice that you don't matter anymore, if they do happen to hoover and come back, there is a whole different like mental gymnastic that they have to go through first, which is that they would have to admit to themselves that they made the wrong decision. They would have to admit to themselves, and they have to go through the mental gymnastics of convincing themselves that you're not disgusting anymore, that their perception of you was incorrect. They need time to forget about all of the ways that you turned them off and were so boring to them for so long, so unstimulating. They need time, a long enough time to forget that they would even think about hoovering and coming back again. And by that time, when they actually do come back, the dynamic is completely different because they left you. So there's no blackmail, there's no clawing at you, there's no revenge. It's them actually begging you to come back. It's them giving you flowers. It's the honeymoon stage all over again. And the goal is not to get to the honeymoon stage so you can get back together with them, but you have to understand you're in a completely different, powerful position at that point. And I eventually will make a different video on what you even deal with when it comes to hoovering. The video today is just on how to get the fuck out. So that's all we're talking about. But I hope you can see how you're literally setting yourself up for success long term when you leave in a different way where it is their choice, because they don't like admitting to themselves that their choices are wrong or incorrect. And it takes a while for someone with these types of issues to even change their mind about things that are disgusting or boring or unattractive to them. And the movie, interestingly enough, actually kind of touches on this very briefly at the end. Once the husband has realized that the housemaid is not going to be the perfect object that he can just abuse willy-nilly, there's a moment on the stairs where like the husband and wife see each other again, and he's actually doing that for a very brief moment. He is sweet talking her. He is apologizing. It is the honeymoon stage. It's exactly what I'm talking about. That is what happens when you take this approach. And that is a much less stressful state, obviously, to be in. And the last thing I just wanted to say for why this also just literally makes more sense as an approach is because regardless of this stuff that we're talking about right now, think about how women have learned how to manipulate men to get their way, regardless of abuse. You know, men need to feel like things are their idea in order for them to do it more complicitly and with more energy and more excitement. When men think that something is their idea, they are gung-ho all the way because it was their idea. Literally the same exact logic applies to what we're talking about right now. These types of people, regardless of gender, need to feel like it is their idea in order for them to be okay with the thing that they're doing. Whatever the fuck it is, it needs to be their idea. You're creating a situation to where it does become their idea. As you guys know, my channel is about equipping people and developing real tools that we can use on the ground in everyday situations. It is also about unpacking hard ideas that are hard to unmask, taking off our rose-colored glasses and really examining things that we might be indoctrinated into. But it's also about really developing skills and tools that we can use. That maybe a lot of psychologists haven't necessarily come up with or figured out. I found out recently that the woman who created DBT had borderline, and she created it because there was nothing else out there to help her. I just want to encourage you guys that, like, the same way that I have jerry-rigged these weird tools together for myself, I'm sure you have done the same exact thing. And one of the most powerful things that we can do for each other as survivors is share the tools that we're creating with others, because we all can come up with such weird, interesting ideas that actually work. The brain and the body are just an amazing thing, and it never ceases to amaze me how intelligent they are at working together to come up with things to get us safer and to help us survive. And so I hope you have paid attention for yourself, or are paying attention to yourself, and the things that your intelligent mind and brain are coming up with on a daily basis, especially if you're in the midst of abuse, to help you survive, because that's an incredible thing. That doesn't make you weak. That doesn't make you stupid. That actually makes you incredibly intelligent, that you're finding ways to navigate abuse on a daily basis, and you're doing it successfully with no one else's help. You're doing it. Your brain and your body are doing it. And for me, I would also say God is helping you. But that's incredible. And I hope you can give yourself credit for that. So the very first tool that I want to talk about is specifically for the self-doubt, because we cannot do anything and we cannot fully commit to any plan until we have gotten our self-doubt under control. And that's okay, because we're going to do that. So the first tool that I developed for myself is what I call my police officer scientist hat. I actually tried to look up a picture of like what a scientist hat might look like to kind of create an image for you guys. And apparently there is not a scientist hat. I don't know why I thought that there was. So I just kind of found like a baker's hat and put a police officer hat on top of it. And that's it. That's our police officer scientist hat. You're welcome. So the police officer scientist hat actually is going to help you throughout your entire life for more than just getting out of danger. What my police officer scientist hat helped me learn, which I did not realize it was going to help me learn in the moment, but it helps me get out of fantasy-based thinking and black and white thinking as well. Because what we're learning to do with this tool is actually slow our minds down and get out of a triggered state or a hyper emotional state so that we can assess our environment accurately and pick up on information and data collect like a police officer or a scientist. And the one way that we are able to do that is by calming our brains down, getting out of fight or flight, getting out of our hyper emotional state, and learning how to regulate enough to where we can look at this person, look at the situation that we're in, and look at ourselves and figure out what data is going on around us. And you have to understand that the triggered state and the hyper emotional state are the root of the problem. They feed the fantasy-based thinking and the black and white thinking, but beneath the fantasy-based thinking and black and white thinking is these two core issues. So my police officer scientist hat is once again a tool that I use in the world at large now, and over time I have learned how to regulate myself and calm myself down faster and faster, and it has been easier and easier for me to data collect and collect accurate, realistic information where I can't really lie to myself, and I am seeing the true reality of my surroundings easier and easier. That is a huge skill for me, especially as a survivor of trauma. I mean, the black and white thinking and the fantasy-based thinking, those are handicaps. Those are things that keep us in these cycles of abuse. So this very first tool that I'm talking about is going to help you not even get back into these situations. It's going to be a preventative tool later on down the line. That's what it's going to turn into for you. I didn't really specify this, but hopefully you guys know that the main reason I'm recommending this tool is because of the confusion and the self-doubt. Just like I said, the movie didn't really touch on that piece because she was already very confident in her decision and in her perception of him and herself. But for us, we oftentimes are very disoriented and still struggling to understand what is up and what is down because this person has been the sole narrator determining that for both of us throughout most of the relationship. And even before we met this person, probably throughout a great deal of our life, we have let other people be the narrator. The police officer scientist hat is the tool that you're using to cultivate that muscle to where once again, you are starting to make decisions for your own perception of reality, not them. And the way that you are able to decide what is actually true in reality is by getting out of fantasy-based thinking and getting out of black and white thinking, which are unrealistic and therefore disorienting because they also are not accurate to what's actually going on either, let alone what this person's telling you. And the way that you are able to actually stay grounded enough to make a decision is by using this to learn how to perceive reality accurately again. Because not only is this person throwing you off, but you're throwing yourself off. And you have to also understand that because we're used to living in these triggered states, in these hyper emotional states, that's also how sometimes we research things. We research things in these states. We research narcissism. We research abuse out of an emotional need. We're being fueled by emotion, not logic. And that can really impede our ability to data collect and see the world in a realistic way from that standpoint as well. Because typically what happens when you're researching and you haven't learned how to get out of black and white thinking is instead of learning how to see the world in a realistic way, or yourself or your abuser, you tend to just kind of pendulum swing it back into the black. You've been living in the white and now you're just going into the black instead. And that is not realistic. That is just pendulum swinging into all bad. That's not necessarily going to help you get out of your situation. It might temporarily, but then they're going to be able to hoover you because you are going to be able to get duped into going back into the white. We don't want you to think in black and white. We want you to think, I don't know who we is. I'll figure that out later. But I don't want you to go into black and white. I want you to learn how to think realistically. It's much harder. It's much more nuanced. You are going to need a journal. But that is what I want for you. And also, please don't keep your journal in a place where the person can find it. Let's think smart. So you're going to use your police officer scientist hat to learn and grow confidence in yourself that yes, this is the situation I'm dealing with, but deeper than that, learn the actual personality of the person in front of you, not what you want to think about them, not the all evil things. I want you to really assess what their trigger points are, what turns them off, and even more than that, what they are trying or successfully inducing in you when they cause conflict. The conflict is the key point that we need to assess within these relationships, not because it's the super, super scary point, but what I came to realize when I really started assessing these things and trying to make my plan to get out was that when there isn't conflict, there's nothing. And it actually shocked me how much of a shell of a relationship the relationship actually was when there wasn't conflict. Because really, these people that I had been involved with were kind of shells of themselves when there wasn't conflict. The honeymoon stage wasn't real. That was just temporary. That was a temporary performance. It's something that they're able to whip back out when they're trying to get us to stay, but none of that is sustainable because it's not who they really are. And so that's not even there when there isn't conflict. It's not like you just go back into the honeymoon phase and that's what you live inside of. No, there's nothing. There's no real connection. There's nothing that you actually really enjoy doing together. You don't really have hobbies that you enjoy doing together because they don't really like you and they don't really care about you. And most of the relationship, without you realizing it, has slowly compounded into only being about conflict and resolving conflict and making them happy again so that there isn't conflict. It all resolves around the conflict. And so when you give yourself the ability to actually see things for what they really are, and you're learning how to deal with the conflict in a different way, you would be shocked when you look up one day and look around and you're like, wow, outside of this thing, outside of this dynamic that I've been so busy obsessing over that I haven't paid attention to anything else, I'm basically like in an empty room alone. There's no life being lived. But at the time, it felt like our relationship was a living, breathing, real organism and experience that was happening together, but it's not. And that's one thing that you will notice when you start using your police officer scientist hat. So just to recap really quick before I move on to the next tool, you're trying to see who they really are. And the thing is, they've actually told you these things about themselves, what they don't like, and you have really obviously observed their trigger points and what pisses them off. And they've told you this because of how they've complained about exes and how they complain about other people in real life, how they devalue people when they're talking to you about them. And they typically did this more at the beginning of the relationship, which kind of gave you cues of how you're not supposed to act and who you're not supposed to be. They would devalue certain people that they've dated in the past or that are around them, either by calling them fat, complaining about how they did X, Y, and Z things that drove them crazy. And we picked up on those stories, and we ourselves have avoided any of those behaviors or characteristics because we wanted to keep them around. Those are the things you're going to be pulling out of your toolbox now. So you need to pay attention to what those things are. Re-examine. And if you think about it, this technique makes sense because most of what we have done the entire relationship is learn what behaviors to avoid that they don't like. Granted, we've learned those behaviors so we don't get hit, we don't get insulted, but ultimately it is so that they would pick us. So if you don't want them to pick you anymore, you actually kind of know what to do to a certain degree so that they unpick you. It's just that I want to teach you today how to utilize that skill so that you do it in the correct way and head the correct direction with it. Because there is a way to go about it that is actually effective, and there's a way to go about it that actually just kind of keeps you in your cycles of chaos and fighting and within your merry-go-round cycle of abuse. We don't want that. We want to get off the merry-go-round. We don't want to make it spin faster or just change the direction it's spinning in. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you're going to be paying attention to what triggered state they're trying to get you into, because it's not the same for all of us. Some of us, when we respond in conflict with them, we fight, we're protective. We get invested in the fight, and it can get very, very heated. You have to understand that they actually enjoy that. They might act like they don't enjoy it. It might feel very uncomfortable in the moment, but they actually enjoy that. So maybe you're the type of personality that fights back. And that's what they enjoy, and that's the dynamic that they're actually looking for and trying to perpetuate continually. Or maybe you're the type of person that fawns and you put yourself down and you get very quiet, and that's the way that they want to feel control, is they actually want to see you put yourself down. They want to see that they can time and time again cause you to doubt your sense of self, and they have the power and the ability to almost like annihilate your confidence. And that's how they feel control over you. It's not that they see that they can control your emotions by getting you mad and getting you wound up whenever they want. It's that they can literally fucking crush you with like the push of a button. And that's how they feel control over you. Maybe it's that you're dating a sex addict, and the way that they feel control over you is that they know that they can just get you to fuck them whenever they want. No matter how mad you are, no matter how much they have actually demoralized you, put you down, no matter how they have treated you, you will provide sex whenever it is that they want sex. And that's how they feel control, is having access to your body like an object whenever it is that they want access. And you've allowed that. Maybe it's that the way that they feel control is that they're able to get you anxious. When you feel like they threaten leaving, and that's their thing. They don't necessarily stonewall or do something like that, but they threaten to leave, and they feel control and a sense of power because you panic, you completely fall apart, you become stage 9 clingy, you blow up their phone. you crash out, but not necessarily in like a mad way, like the first example I listed, but you literally cannot function until you have heard from them again. Your entire nervous system just falls apart. And they know that they can do that to you, and they can make you wait until they decide to come back, and that you will not be able to be a whole, complete, functioning person until they come back. And that's how they feel control. It's important to see what kind of emotional state they are always trying to induce you into and are successfully inducing you into, because that's the opposite of what you are going to work on becoming. And that's why this takes months. This doesn't just happen overnight. Sometimes it happens overnight if you're like, okay, yeah, I'm already pretty fed up. Got it, I'm going to do that. Got it, I'm going to do that. Like if you're already at a pretty fed up point, this will be pretty easy for you. But if you're still even struggling to know how you officially feel about the relationship, it's going to take some time, but that's okay, because we're in this together. But before the last part of this video, where I tell you 3 examples of performances that you can put on, the last thing I want you to understand is that your end goal is to induce boredom in this person and or disgust. But mostly what you're trying to get them into is a state of lack where they're not stimulated. Because typically we are the thing keeping them stimulated. We allow them we are a kind of outlet for whatever it is that they need to project onto us and take out through us. They take out a lot of things on us. And how we help them do that is through the emotional states that we get into that help them feel a sense of power and control. And that's what's very stimulating to them and satisfying for them. So the end goal for any performance that you pick, again, because the conflict is the center of the relationship, and without the conflict, there is not a relationship. That is the thing that they need. That is the tool that they use to get their sense of power, satisfaction, and stimulation. So that's the thing that you're going to be taking away from them that will cause them to lose interest in you, whatever that is. So your end goal is to get them bored and to make them not be able to feel, they don't feel that sense of stimulation and power and control from you, through you. And you have to know that this is the reason why this works, is because they chose you for a reason. They didn't choose Sandy over here because she would not have been able to do this for them. And there are other personality types, like let's say that they prefer someone who like fights back, and they like seeing that they can get people angry. They wouldn't pick somebody necessarily who like fawns and falls apart and gets super clingy. That's the other thing. It's like you have your own unique dynamic with these people. There are some people where they want someone to become a stage 9 clinger because that makes them feel a sense of worth and power. There are other people where whatever MO they have going on, they need someone who is trainable and able to not investigate too hard. They don't hold them to a high standard. They don't really bug them a lot. They let them have that kind of independence that they need to have to do whatever the hell it is that they're doing. So either way, they picked you for a reason. So if you are able to become a different type of person, they will unpick you. And the main type of person that they don't want to pick is someone who does not stimulate them or make them feel the things that I've continually listed that I will stop listing over and over because you freaking get it. So that's the end goal. You have to become almost the opposite of yourself. And so the 4 roles that I'm about to, performance roles that I'm about to explain, are the opposite of whatever you are. So you're going to do them if they are the opposite of, does that make sense? So you're going to figure out what the opposite is. And then once you figure out what the opposite is, with each of these performative roles, you are going to use that moment of boredom that you induce to create distance. You are going to bore them, make them feel no attraction to you and no interest in you. And then during that moment, I'm going to tell you how you induce distance, because the way that you ultimately get them to leave on their own as their own choice is by giving them the opportunity to meet other people while you are gone. And you are also giving them the opportunity to not really see that you're leaving while you're leaving. Because while they're bored and while they are disinterested in you, when you create distance, they don't notice as much and they don't care as much. So the first performative role that you can take on, if this is the opposite of what you typically are, is what I call the sparkle rock. Sparkle rocking is one of the opposite states that you can go into. When I have sparkle rocked, I typically become someone who is very agreeable and a great listener. I'm not upset by anything going on. When they are trying to get me mad, and I have journaled enough and put on my police officer scientist hat enough that I know what tactics they typically use to get me riled up. So I know when it's happening, and I know that's the moment I need to stay in control of myself, and I'm able to commit to my role because I know what perception of reality I have, and therefore I have no doubts about committing to it. Does that make sense? Because I now basically fucking hate this person, and I'm more than fine with doing whatever the hell it is I need to do to get away. I've long-term committed to my shit. So I'm sparkle rocking. That means that they come at me, they do something to me that typically would get me mad. They tell me a story, something that would get me jealous. They do something intentionally that they know normally pisses me off. It always usually looks like an accident, but I know now that it's not an accident, that it's intentional, and I stay pretty happy. I become extra listening. I talk through it with them. I'm never necessarily in a bad mood. It's more than gray rocking where I stay neutral, because from me staying happy and me being more than willing to like listen and find solutions, and I'm just usually pretty chipper, they're not getting that sense of power and control. I think sometimes when I've gray rocked and I just stay kind of flat, I think they can tell that I'm just holding some shit in, and they just need to keep wearing me down. And once they keep wearing me down enough, I'm going to pop and explode. For me, gray rocking and staying neutral doesn't usually mask what I'm feeling very well. It just looks like I'm bottling. Versus sparkle rocking, I think sparkle rocking is a more convincing way of showing them like, you literally have no power here. You cannot affect my mood. And so I'm happy. That's the only way I know how to explain it, is like, and I'm not happy all the time. These are performances that I'm taking on when conflict is attempting to be caused. So it's not like I just become this super happy housewife 24/7, like I'm on cocaine or something. It's not that. It's specifically when they are trying to induce conflict that I become the opposite self. And the opposite self, if I'm typically angry and easily emotional, is super happy. Not flat, super happy. You would have to figure out on your own if sparkle rocking feels like enough of the opposite for you that this is the performance that you would want to do. You almost kind of have to test it out to see if it de-escalates things enough and induces like boredom and a lack of stimulation enough. So the next performance role that you can take on is what I call self-crucifying. So self-crucifying is where, yes, like they might be putting you down or telling you how you mess something up, but you are doing most of the kicking for them. So they can't even really enjoy the moment where it's like, oh, I'm saying all these things. And the thing is, this is what's funny with a lot of these tricks is like, they've actually done things like this to us, but in reverse. A lot of times, like when I'm telling you to data collect to figure out what their weak spots are in order to get away, they've data collected on us and figured out our weak spots to seduce us and get closer to us to control us. So you're doing the same thing, but like in reverse. And here, I've had guys where to avoid accountability, they have self-crucified, and it totally took the power away from me to just be able to speak for myself about how they hurt me. I couldn't do that. I couldn't even be upset at them because they were literally like whipping and beating themselves before I even could, and to like the nth degree. Like it was so extreme, and their self-hatred that they were expressing was so extreme that I couldn't even have a moment to just say what it was that I needed to say because they were saying everything. You're doing that, but for a different reason. And the goal is different. So they might start out being upset with you and trying to cultivate this moment that goes in a specific direction, but you're going to totally hijack that moment, and you're just going to start verbally abusing the crap out of yourself. Whatever they say, you agree, and you take it even further. You insult yourself even further. Hopefully, you will know while you're saying these things that none of this is true, but you're going to self-flagellate and self-crucify like to the nth degree. And it's totally going to hijack that moment and take away any feelings of like power that they might have because you're doing it to yourself. So how are they going to feel like they're the ones doing it? You're doing it. Does that make sense? And in that moment, while you're self-crucifying, you can use that moment, and I'll talk about sparkle rocking again in a second, but you can use that moment while you're self-flagellating, self-crucifying to be like, because I'm such a piece of shit, and because you're right, and I'm such a burden, and I'm so horrible, I'm going to take a few days for myself to just kind of like be alone and really think about all of this. And they might be like, no, don't do that. But it's like, no, you're right. You said it and I agree. You're right. Like, you're not disagreeing with them. You're literally agreeing with them. And you're taking what they have said and you're using it to your benefit. I know that there's a move within martial arts, or a kind of mindset within martial arts, where you don't fight against an enemy's momentum and power as a combative technique. You actually take the energy in the direction that their energy is moving in towards you, and you just continue it in a different direction that benefits you. So you don't fight against it. We're talking about physical altercations. You don't fight against it and push back. You actually see them running at you and whatever momentum they have behind themselves in the direction they're headed in, and you just utilize their own momentum and energy and just kind of guide them in a different direction that is harmful to them and not to you. That's kind of what I'm talking about with the self-flagellation. Is like, yeah, no, you said it. I'm using your words to create distance. I'm using your ideas to create distance for myself. And as you create distance for yourself, it's just going to become a little bit longer and a little bit longer and a little bit longer. So with sparkle rocking, when you sparkle rock and you get them into that bored state where you're like super happy and super chipper and you're not helping them feel power or control whatsoever over you, you can use that moment to encourage them to go out into the world, because it's not like they really want to be around you anyway. So it's like, yeah, I appreciate you so much and you're so great and you're so right, and all of these fights and positive about, the ways that you abuse me are just so fucking awesome, and you're such a great partner, and how you treat me like shit, whatever. You're so right about all of your points from our fights. You should go out with the boys. You should go out and treat yourself and have a night for yourself. And the thing is, you're kind of hoping that while they're out there, they're going to forget about you. As you keep having these moments where you induce distance, it's an opportunity for them to forget about you and lose interest in you more and more and more. But you start out with just, you should go out more. And then you encourage that more. And as they're continuing to stay bored with you, they will be fine with doing that. All of this is encouraging them to do things that they will also want to do. You have to understand that with a lot of people like this, they're not emotionally committed to us anyway. They're not loyal to us because they don't actually care about us. So even if they're not literally explicitly cheating on us, most of them have their emotional toe at least dipped in a little bit with someone else. Like, they have other connections on the side that even if they're not explicitly having sex with these people or having a full-on relationship with them on the side, there are people that they at least get some kind of emotional benefit and gain from, that they have some interest in. So they do have outlier options for themselves. Like, I almost feel like the visual analogy I always see is like some hands in some cookie jars. You're not the only cookie jar that they're getting cookies out of, because you can't give them all of the supply that they need anyway. There's always people on the outside that they're getting some version of some kind of cookie from as well, even if it's not a full-on cheating, romantically involved situation. So as you create this distance, and as you allow them to become bored with you and start forgetting about you from the distance that you're creating, where you don't see them as often, you're creating space, you're not texting as much for whichever excuse that you're using to not text as much, and you're allowing them to kind of move on, they're probably going to these other cookie jars. And unfortunately, that will work to your benefit, just like it did in the movie, where eventually they're going to find someone else if you allow them the time and the space to find someone else who is more stimulating than you. Does that mean that you just abandon that person? No, it means that you can leave the relationship, get to a safe spot, make sure you're safe, and then just like she did in the movie, once she was safe, she came back to try to help the other girl. You also can do something like that, but you don't know who these people are. You don't know who they're going to choose. And so right now it's about you getting yourself to a safe place and getting out before you can assess maybe who they pick next, find out who they pick next. And if you want to be able to go back and help that person or try to help that person because they also are an autonomous person who makes their own choices, you can try and do that. But that's not what we're talking about right now. If you are dating someone who's a sex addict and the way that they typically feel power and control is through utilizing you for sex, I have actually done this. I don't take sex away because that might induce stress and conflict, and we're not inducing stress and conflict. That's stimulation. We are not giving them stimulation. So I keep having sex with them. I give them the worst kind of sex they've ever had. I've actually done this. I basically starfish. I get really bad at giving blowjobs. I start using my teeth a little bit on accident. And it just becomes a very boring experience. I get out of breath a lot easier. I just don't have the stamina that I used to. I'm not really emotionally involved in it. I'm kind of flat. I'm not very present. So I'm not fighting. I'm not saying I'm not giving you sex. You don't get sex. It's not that. They still get the thing. They just don't really get a very good version of the thing. And after a while, they just don't really want the thing. And another way of doing this, especially if you're used to benefit their image, and she actually did this in a very subtle way in the movie. I don't know if you picked up on it, you probably did, but he was always obsessed with her making sure that her roots didn't show. And as Millie started working at the house, she stopped getting her roots touched up. She grew out her roots. And that was something that really turned him off and he couldn't stand. I'm not saying like if they hate people who they consider fat, who typically aren't even fat, that you gain weight. I mean, you go for it if you want to, do your thing, girl. But I'm just saying, see what they find unattractive in people. And if it's within your scope and your range to be able to do for yourself, not dressing as nice, whatever it is. You know, you can, if there's something within your scope and your range that you can do it. Do it. I mean, you know these people, you've been involved with these people. It's just that you haven't necessarily been utilizing all of your knowledge to your benefit and your gain. If you're normally someone who has a lot of energy and the way that you contribute to them feeling power and control and stimulated through the relationship is matching their energy, become depressed, become someone who can't get out of bed. I mean, there's things that you can do. You just have to figure out what their turnoffs are. And you have to figure out how you are contributing to the fights so that you can learn how to contribute in a different way. If you're typically pretty funny and you're typically pretty good at creating really fun memories, if you guys share a social circle, you might want to work on becoming really boring, not just starfishing in sex, but starfishing in general in life. Just take on a starfish personality in everything for a while. You know, figure out how to make it the least enjoyable experience for them possible. And then the last performative role that I wanted to touch on, and I'm sure I'm not touching on all of them, it's impossible to, but I call this one stage 9 clinger. I've also used this one. There was a relationship that I was in where I ultimately realized he was just dating me to make an ex-girlfriend jealous. And so because of that, he needed a certain amount of like freedom and independence within the relationship. And he wasn't super emotionally invested in me because of that. And so I didn't really push it. You know, I let him have, because I didn't realize at the time what was going on, but I let him have that independence. I let him have that freedom because, again, he told me stories about how he didn't like people who were clingy and people who like needed too much and people who asked too many questions. So I learned, okay, don't do that. Well, now I know, do that. So I started doing that. I started mothering the crap out of him. I started trying to control how much he drank because he loved drinking. And I acted like it was really going to be a problem for me after a certain point. And the thing was, I had that power dynamic to use because he needed to be in a relationship with me. It wouldn't have looked good if he was just bouncing from relationship to relationship. He was trying to make his ex jealous by showing her that he was able to be in a sustainable, successful, long-term relationship with someone who he could satisfy and who he could make happy, not somebody who was just breaking up with him after 3 months, because that would make him look bad. So I had a certain power edge to use that I used, but it got to the point where I was so needy, and I was so, because he didn't want to let me go. There was a point where I could tell that if I left, he was going to obsessively try to get me back. And I was worried because of certain personality traits he'd exhibited about the level of obsession that he was going to show. I was concerned about that. And so I became incredibly needy. I started asking him to get rid of his social media because that was the way that he posted pictures of us to try to get her upset. There were certain things that I did that made it not sustainable for him or beneficial for him because of what he was trying to do and what he was trying to use me for. I stopped wanting to take pictures together at all. I said I wasn't comfortable with that. There were things that I did that ultimately made him discard me. And that was actually the very first person I was ever able to get to successfully discard me. And it was just a whole different feeling knowing that I was completely free from him and he was not coming back. Again, you're not trying to induce conflict. You don't want conflict. You want boredom. So it's about like maybe trying to remove that lack of independence that they have. But then when you're getting them to stay home with you, it's so incredibly boring. Like so boring. You're not trying to stimulate them. You're not trying to make them happy. You're not trying to create beautiful new memories together. It is so boring. So you're taking away the thing that they need to receive stimulation somewhere else, but you're also not stimulating them at home. Talk about hell on earth. I mean, there's ways that you can pigeonhole them into kind of their worst nightmare to where they're not able to receive cookies outside or inside. Whatever it is that you can figure out to make them ultimately see that it's more beneficial to leave you behind than to stay with you. That is the end goal. Anyway, I'm sure that I haven't touched on all of the possible dynamics or possible performance roles that you could take on. If you guys have any experience in this, or if you have any ideas, feel free to leave them in the comments down below. I was really excited to make this video. And I really hope that a lot of people start becoming badasses in their relationships. Because more than anything, the performance roles are helpful. And I think they're a huge survival tool that people can use. But I think more than anything, your police officer scientist hat is gonna give you the most freedom, because being able to see the world for what it really is and who people really are, not in black and white terms, not in fantasy-based terms, but really for who they are, is the best kind of freedom, more than anything else. And the rest of it will work itself out. You're smart. You've figured out how to survive in this relationship and navigate and honestly perform plenty anyway. I'm just encouraging you to use the same intelligence and the same performative skills that you used so far to your advantage in a different way. Anyway, thanks as always for watching, and God bless.